You fucking horse! No! No! No!
I'm explaining a film from 2015 titled Knock Knock. Spoilers ahead. Enjoy the content. Evan Webb and his wife Karen are fooling around in bed on Father's Day. Their children Jack and Lisa entered the room with a cake for Evan. In California, Evan and Karen enjoy a happy existence with their 2 children and a tiny dog. He is an architect, she is a sculptor getting ready for her biggest show. Louis, Karen's helper, enters the home carrying the exhibition catalogs as the family is seated at the table for breakfast. After some light-hearted banter, Evan asks his children if they are prepared for their weekend trip to the beach with their mother. Louis pledges to pick up the main piece once it is ready to take it to the gallery after Karen shows him it and explains that it is still drying. While getting ready to leave, Karen informs Evan that his physical therapist Vivian will be there the next day. On the weekends, the kids ask him to join them, but he has work to do. Evan can be seen working on his computer and listening to music on his incredibly sophisticated turntable during the pitch-black, rainy night. Karen calls him and lets him know they already miss him. Evan then proceeds to create 3D printed versions of his designs into the night. He eventually answers the front door to find 2 girls searching for a person whose name he doesn't know after hearing a knock. He reluctantly grants them access so they can use his computer to locate the correct place they need to visit. As soon as the girls enter, the blonde girl introduces herself as Belle. The other girl's name is Genesis. Since they gave the cab driver the wrong street name, Genesis says they are now quite distant from their intended location and requests his address. In less than 45 minutes, Evan calls them an Uber and gets one. After briefly deliberating, the girls ask Evan whether they may dry their clothes so they won't arrive at the party sopping wet. Evan agrees and gets them some extra robes, then asks for Genesis's phone to try and dry it in some rice. When they enter the kitchen and give him their clothes, he can then be seen doing just that as well as preparing tea for them. When Evan hears the girls laughing and playing music on his old turntable, he puts the laundry in the dryer. They are dancing when he enters, and they immediately begin discussing his enormous record collection. Evan reveals to them that in his 20s, he worked as a DJ. When he reveals his age, the females comment that he appears younger because they pretended to be surprised by it and asked him how old he is. Evan says that he got married young and that his wife and kids are on a weekend trip where they were supposed to go together, but he had to stay home to work. Genesis begins groping him, remarking that he is way too ripped to be as old as he is, and the ladies hug him out of sympathy for him remaining at home alone. Evan starts to feel a little uneasy, but when Belle shows him a picture of his wife and tells him that he's lucky, he starts to feel better. When Belle discovers that all of the artwork in the home is Karen's, she is astounded by Evan's adoration for Karen and her creations. He changes seats once again before checking on the Uber. He responds that it has been a while when Genesis inquires how long he and Karen have been wed. He responds that it's how it is when you love someone when she inquires as to whether his wife has been the only woman he has had sexual relations with throughout all of those years. Naturally, the girls don't agree with him and have a lot to say about monogamy and human nature, making Evan think for a second. As he becomes more agitated, Evan shifts the subject by inquiring about their occupation. Genesis tells him they are flight attendants, and they both begin acting like one with him. Evan avoids them once more before shifting to a different seat and inquiring as to where they are based. All of them start talking about their jobs and travel, with Belle stating that it is the best way to get experience in life. When Genesis requests to visit the restroom, Evan anxiously checks on the Uber once more. Belle selects a record from his collection as he stands up to change the record. She pays close attention as Evan describes the musician to her, and when she starts to dance, Evan decides to DJ for her. Belle informs him that she is happy they knocked on his door since they are having a lot more fun there than at the party they were going to attend. He explains to her that it's usually less thrilling at his house without them present. Belle believes it was fate that brought them together and asks him to dance with her while telling her that everything happens for a reason. When the Uber arrives unexpectedly, she is trying to kiss him while playing with him. Genesis is picked up by Belle, and he also goes to retrieve their clothes and the phone. Evan goes to look for the girls in the restroom. When he enters after hearing them laughing inside to give them their clothes, he discovers that they are completely undressed. Together, the trio of them drift off to sleep. The Uber leaves because no one returns his calls. The following morning, Evan gets out of bed on his own, answers his wife's texts, and then refastens his wedding band. When he believes the girls are gone, he gets dressed and checks the house, but as soon as he does, he hears them giggling and creating a mess in the kitchen. His wife's phone rings out of the blue, so he sprints outdoors to answer it. Karen deems Evan a lightweight even though he claims he passed out from too much marijuana use, according to Evan. When the two girls emerge on the glass door behind him, she starts informing him about the kids. When they are on a video conversation, he moves so that she can't see them. The girls continue to mess with him through the glass doors and Karen notices that he's distracted so they end the call. He enters the house swearing and yelling at the girls since he knows it will be difficult to get rid of them. He decides to actually call the police when they claim that yesterday night served as inspiration for them. Genesis explains to him that since they are minors, it wouldn't be a smart idea. Belle is 15, she claims. Genesis informs Evan that even though he doesn't believe it, the jury will. When the doorbell rings, Evan answers the door and finds Vivian, his therapist. The woman keeps talking endlessly until Genesis emerges and informs her that he doesn't want her to give him a massage. Vivian becomes quite unhappy when Evan urges her to go back inside since she adores his wife. When Evan returns, he discovers the girls fiddling with his turntable. As the girls continue to tease him, he pushes Genesis away from the table. Evan then began calling the police until Genesis said she wanted to tell them he was involved in statutory rape, claiming she and Belle were both 15 years old. He said he was going to report the burglary, so Genesis asked for a ride home. He took them to the house they claimed to live in and left. The ladies then leave the house and enter the playground. Evan packed up and headed back to work. Later that evening he heard a shuddering noise. He walked into the living room and found a broken picture frame of himself and his family. Genesis then appears behind him and knocks him down with the sculpture.
Hello? Oh my God.
Evan awakens while being bound to the bed and Belle strips off her panties and flings it in his direction while dancing and declaring that every girl's first love is her father. Belle is informed by Evan that she is ill, but she just keeps playing her games. He begs her to untie him, but she merely sits on top of him, exposing some of her deeply ingrained father issues and challenging upbringing. Genesis simultaneously scrawls, "It was not a dream," over the mirror. Belle starts to attack Evan, associating him with her own father and acting as if he had injured Belle when she was a young girl. They both reach for his phone when it starts to ring suddenly. They prepare to respond and they recognize Evan's FaceTime call is from Karen. He begs them not to do it and assures Belle that he will fulfill her requests. Belle jumps him because she wants to make love to him, and Genesis records it on his phone before leaving the room. Evan succeeds in escaping his chains, knocks Belle to the ground, gets up, and chases after Genesis. He takes her by the neck when he discovers her eating cake, but she stabs him in the shoulder with her fork. The anguish Evan experiences causes him to pass out, which gives the girls the chance to tie him up again. The ladies gave him headphones as part of their weird game show style test. Suddenly Lewis appears at the door and enters with his key. So he can collect Karen's sculpture.
Mr. Weber?
We'll be back after a message from our sponsors.
Genesis poses as Evan's niece making a music video featuring Bello as her boyfriend.
is this shit?
When Genesis makes advances on Lewis, Lewis doesn't believe them and wants to call the police. When Evan starts to make noise and Lewis comes over to him, he confronts the girls. When he hears the females damaging the sculpture, he resolves to deal with them. Lewis rushes over to them and yells at them, but Lewis stumbles and hits his head on the sculpture's base, killing himself.
Give him to him! No, Genesis! Lewis! Oh my God!
Evan begs the girls to call an ambulance and assist Lewis. While Genesis claims that his wife murdered him with a poor sculpture, Evan claims that they were the ones to do it. He refuses to respond to the query and instead keeps repeating that he is a good father and that what happened to the girls has no impact on how much he values his family. Belle spits on a picture of Evan's family after Genesis refers to them as victims of his perverse behavior and claims that's what he did to them when he had sex with the two of them. Evan knows they're going to kill him, so he starts pleading for his life, accusing the girls of starting the whole thing by tormenting him and taking absolutely no responsibility for himself. Genesis informs him that he will be put to death at dawn and that, if she were in his position, she wouldn't squander her final hours sobbing. Later, the girls dig a grave for him in his backyard and come back inside just as he's managed to get his tablet to call Karen. Genesis takes it away from him, then they go to change into some other clothes from his closet. The majority of Karen's sculptures and his design models are then defaced. Along with making fun of him and utterly trashing his home and the remainder of Karen's artwork, the girls also give him a bowl cut. Belle releases him after they unexpectedly discover the gun. Genesis responds that she wants to play hide and seek when Evan asks her again, giving him 30 seconds to hide within the house. She promises that they will depart if they can't locate him by sunrise. As the girls start counting down from 30, Evan rushes into the kitchen and grabs a knife. They go looking for him throughout the house and when he thinks they're far enough, Evan runs out of the house. When Genesis reaches him, she tells him that he may scream all he wants and that nobody will hear him because nobody is at home. The females roll Evan to the cemetery and drop him inside at dawn. They raise him so that his head is left above the earth before they start to bury him. He is buried up to his neck in the ground, but he keeps pleading for his life. Genesis pulls the joke after Evan makes a pledge to act properly. Genesis responds to his attempt to negotiate with them for his life by offering to let him free if he phones his family and tells them everything. Evan promises to do it, but when Genesis calls his wife's phone and gets her answering machine, he starts screaming for help.
No!
When he starts sobbing, they laugh and declare that they won't kill him. They claim that all the men they have done this to are the same, and Belle explains that it was simply a game. They do one more thing to Evan before admitting that they aren't genuinely underage. After leaving the phone in front of him and leaving the house, Belle shares the tape of her and Evan on Facebook. Evan tries to delete the video to prevent it from receiving any more views than it already has, but instead clicks like. The next day, when his family gets home, they are met with the complete chaos the girls left the house in. That's how the movie ends. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. Your support would be appreciated. I hope to see you next time.